The rain had barely begun when billionaire Ethan Voss stepped into the cemetery, bouquet in hand, expecting only silence and regret. Instead, he found two young girls, sisters, kneeling at the grave of his ex-wife, sobbing into the stone that bore her name. One tucked a note beneath a pebble. The other whispered words no child should have to say in the rain. Their eyes, blue-green, familiar, met his. And in that instant, Ethan realized the world had kept a secret from him so staggering it could undo everything he thought he knew about love, loss, and fatherhood. The rain starts as a mist, the kind that makes the world look like it's remembering something it can't quite say out loud. I stand under a slate sky with a black umbrella in one hand and a bouquet of white lilies in the other, feeling like an intruder at a place where the word quiet isn't strong enough. The names on the stones around me are strangers, but the one in front of me isn't. Lila Hart. Beloved daughter. Beloved friend. The word beloved appears twice, and not once as beloved wife, which is appropriate. I stop myself from wondering whose fault that was. It feels bad to keep score in a cemetery for. The service was yesterday. I arrived late, sat in the last row, and left before anyone had to decide whether they should look at me. Today, I came alone. It seemed better, more honest somehow, to stand with my grief without an audience to clap or boo. I don't wear my wedding ring, haven't in years, but my finger remembers it. Phantom gold. I chose a time when no one would be here, but as I round the bend in the path, I see them. Two girls, one smaller than the other, bundled in rain jackets, kneeling at Lila's grave. Their hoods are up, but I can see that the older one's braid is the kind of neat you do for a special day, and the younger one's curls are the kind that defy every comb, every plea. They have their heads bowed, their shoulders papery with the shivers, and as I take a step closer, I hear the sound I was trying to avoid in myself. Little aching sobs that start in the bones and work their way up. I stop. This is a private thing. But they're kids. The younger one's hand is stretched over the top of the granite as if she's trying to take the whole stone's weight into her palm. The older one whispers something I can't hear and passes a folded note through her fingers, then tucks it beneath a smooth white pebble at the grave's base. She notices me first, or notices the umbrella blocking a sliver of gray sky, and flinches, bringing her free hand to her face to wipe away what she doesn't want a stranger to see. I start and realize there's no honest word for what I am. Ex-husband is both true and a lie. I knew, Lila, I say. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. They look at each other with some silent language I remember seeing between sisters on school playgrounds, at airports, in waiting rooms. The younger one sniffs and steps 1 inch behind the older, as if she could hide in her shadow. The older one has eyes the muted green of a storm before it moves in. She studies me. I feel like I'm being weighed. "Do you know where the groundskeeper's office is?" she asks finally. "We want to bring flowers, but we don't know if we have to ask someone. We don't want to do anything wrong." Something inside my chest, tight since yesterday, loosens a little. "You can leave flowers," I say. "That's never wrong." I look down at my own bouquet, feeling foolish suddenly for the extravagance of lilies. Lila always thought lilies smelled like grand hotels and weddings that try too hard. I take a risk and kneel, umbrella leaned awkwardly against my shoulder, and lay one lily on the grass. "She liked peonies better," I hear myself add, "but they have such a short season." The older girl nods like she is taking notes. "We were going to draw some," she says, "in case they don't have them." There are questions I want to ask and don't know how. Who are you? Why are you here? Who is supposed to be with you? Instead, I say, I can walk you to the office if you want. They have vases and tissues. The younger one looks up at the older, and the older looks at me, and after another silent conversation that lasts 1,000 years in a second, she says, "Okay?" in a voice that seems older than her face. We walk. They keep a small, careful distance from me, like I might break if they get too close. The rain spots the path with comet tails where the drops hit hard. I tell myself it's not my business to bring them anywhere or keep them from anywhere. I'm a man who can buy a jet on Tuesday and a building on Thursday, and the silence that follows either on Friday. But I don't have a credential that grants me the right to shepherd strangers' children through their grief. Still, I find myself angling the umbrella so it covers them more than me. "What's your name?" I ask. "June," the older one says. She gestures to the little one. "This is May." June and May, I repeat. The names fit together like two stones that have lived in the same river. I'm Ethan. "Like the furniture store," May says, then clamps her mouth like she said something wrong and looks up through curls that have freed themselves from the hood. Her eyes are blue-green, brighter than June's, familiar in a way that makes something ancient stir in my bones. "I don't know the furniture store," I say. "Is it good?" "It's expensive," she says solemnly. "They let you touch the couches, but not if your hands are sticky." June elbows her gently. "Hush." "It's fine," I say. "I have a lot of experience with sticky hands." The sentence looks true as it leaves my mouth and then hangs there in the air, obviously wholly false. I've never had a child wipe peanut butter on my suit, never tied a shoe that wasn't my own, never had to talk a small person through a big storm. I feel the truth of it and the ache that follows. We reach the little office. The man inside is kind and knows what to do with grief when it arrives in small bodies. He gives them paper cups of water and a choice of vases. He looks at me with a question that takes the shape of, "Are you family?" And I answer with a tight smile that says, "It's complicated." June chooses a plain glass cylinder. May chooses a vase with etched leaves, and then, seeing June's, changes her mind for something that matches her sister. I ask if they need a ride. June says, "No." "Is someone coming for you?" I ask carefully. "Yes," she says, too quickly for it to be entirely true. "Miss Asha is in the car." We asked if we could have a minute, and then it turned into more minutes. "Miss Asha," I say. The name lands in the middle of a dark lake in me and creates ripples that touch shorelines I haven't thought about in years. Lila volunteered at a community center, the kind that gets the good press when the donors need a photo and the bad press when politicians need someone to blame for a city that is bleeding. The director was named Asha Kadir. Lila admired her like a star you can steer by. I look out toward the dripping line of cypress trees. There is a gray sedan idling by the curb, hazard lights blinking like a metronome for worry. A woman sits in the driver's seat watching us. "Would you like me to walk you back?" I ask. "We can walk," June says, and then adds, because she is polite, "Thank you," as if she needs to be entirely clear that no and thank you can live in the same sentence. I let them go, the way you let a paper boat go in a stream knowing it will either snag on a root or make it to wherever water wants to be. But they move only a few steps before May turns and runs back, small boots slapping the wet path. She stops too suddenly, and I have to step back to avoid bumping into her. "Did you know her?" May asks, her voice too big for a whisper and too small for a public voice. "Really? Truly?" "I did," I say. "She said you were good," May says, and the words hit me before I can decide if I am. She said sometimes good people aren't good at being together, but she said you're good. My throat closes. That is exactly something Lila would have said, as if she could do sorcery with language and turn a failure into a complicated mercy. "I'm trying," I say, which is the most honest answer I have. May nods like this is sufficient and runs back to her sister, who already has the sedan's door open. Miss Asha leans across and says something sharp and soft at the same time, in the way of women who cannot afford to be only one thing for long. I don't follow them, not because I don't want to, but because there's a point at which the living have to choose who they become when no one is looking. I watch the hazards blink for another beat and think of Lila, her sharp humor, her careful hope, the way she used to tuck hair behind her ear as if hiding a lightning bolt there. I think of the girl's eyes, that particular blue-green, the exact shade that filled Lila's mother's garden on summer evenings when we'd sit with lemonade and the air tasted like promises. The thought arrives like a storm rolling over a ridge. Impossible, unreasonable, and suddenly the only weather there is. I leave my lilies. I leave the note June tucked under the pebble. I leave a part of the life I used to know. Then I do the thing I always do when I'm afraid. I make a list. Find Asha. Ask about the girls. Do not scare anyone. Do not tell yourself a story you wish were true because it fits the holes in your heart. My driver pulls up when I call him, and he gives me a look in the rear view that is both professional and human. I tell him to wait at the edge of the cemetery. I sit with my phone in my hand as if it were a living thing. There are 100 ways to find a person in this city if you have the money, but I don't want an investigator. I want the courtesy of honesty. So I do what Lila would have done. I call the community center. Sunbridge, the receptionist answers, the same crisp tone that used to answer when Lila volunteered on Thursdays. This is B. B, hi, I say. Could I speak with Asha Khader? Who's calling, she asks, gentle gatekeeper asking a reasonable question. Tell her it's Ethan Voss, I say, because I've learned to stop hiding from my own name. There's a pause and a tiny click when the call transfers. Then a voice I remember, low, unyielding, kind when the world deserves it. Ethan, she says without asking how I got the number. I hoped you'd call. There are a lot of possible replies and only one that doesn't fall apart on contact. Asha, who are June and May? She breathes out a sound like a prayer and a warning. Everything you think you know will change if I answer that, she says. Are you sure you want to know? I went to Lila's grave, I say. 2 girls were there crying. Everything is already changing. Another breath. Another pause. Come to Sunbridge, she says. I won't talk about this on the phone. And Ethan, don't come with your lawyer and don't come with your PR. Come by yourself. I am not a man accustomed to doing anything by myself that involves consequences, but I go. The car slides through the rain, and the city blurs in that strange way that makes grief look like it has a temperature. Sunbridge is housed in a brick building that used to be an elementary school when the city had more children than it does now. Someone painted the front door a hopeful yellow. It helps. A little. Asha meets me in a small office with 2 chairs, a sagging couch, and a poster that says, "Food is a human right," in a font like it wants to fight. She looks exactly the same. Sharp bob, sharper eyes, gentle hands that could put a person back together if needed. She does not offer condolences because she knows how empty they can sound when your grief isn't the right shape for the world's platitudes. You saw them, she says. I did, I say. They said you were with them. I was, she says. They didn't want me to come closer to the grave. They wanted to talk to her alone. Asha sits. She doesn't invite me to, but I do anyway because my legs would shake if I had to use them to hold me up for the next part of this conversation. Ethan, before I tell you anything, I want you to understand that I loved your ex-wife. I didn't always approve of her choices, but I loved her, and that hasn't changed because she made a choice you might not agree with. I signed so many forms I don't remember anymore, I say before I know I'm going to. I was going to be calm. I sound like a man standing in a river that is too swift for him. We did IVF. We had embryos. Then we divorced. The clinic said no. They said a lot of things. That they couldn't use them without both of us. That nothing could happen without a new consent. We never... My voice collapses. We never had children. Asha watches me like she would watch a glass bowl in a toddler's hands. That isn't entirely true, she says softly. She opens the top drawer of her desk and takes out a folder. She places it between us like a bridge we aren't sure we can cross. June is 10. May is 8. I don't know what she's telling me until I do. The world does this too sometimes. It keeps its secret, and then suddenly, all at once, it shrugs its shoulder and lets the avalanche go. How? I say, because there is no intention behind the word, just air that has to be pushed out. I won't pretend I know everything, Asha says. I know what Lila told me, and I know what I saw with my own eyes. After you divorced, she stayed quiet, and then quieter. She volunteered more. She laughed less. One day she showed up with the first baby. I sit completely still, the way you do when you see a wild animal, and you don't know whether stillness will calm it or call its teeth. She showed up where? Here, Asha says, at Sunbridge. She put June in the nursery and made 300 sandwiches for the food program and didn't cry the entire morning. So I made her sit and told her I wouldn't let her leave until she told me how many miles the road she was carrying had on it. I see the picture now. Lila in a threadbare sweater she would never have worn when she was married to me, because we were always performing some small theater for each other about the kind of people who belonged in our life. A baby with a braid waiting to be a braid 10 years later. Asha with the kind of attentiveness that makes a person believe they could carry the world one more day. She was pregnant before the divorce, I ask, dreading, hoping, not sure what it is I wanted to be true 10 years ago and why my mind has to ask the question and why my mouth says it aloud. No, Asha says, she wasn't. She used your embryos. She said you'd given permission, that you just didn't remember signing it with the other 100 papers you had to sign at the clinic and then at your office because a courier brought over a second set when there was a mistake in the date or the format. Something so small and so big. She said you had had a fight the day before, and you wouldn't have signed if she'd asked you then. So she didn't ask again. She carried that choice alone. And then she carried a baby. I feel like I am breaking in precisely measured, polite little shatters so no one is inconvenienced by the cleanup. She would have told me, I say. My tongue is heavy with it. She would have told me. She said she would, Asha says, and then she didn't. If you need me to say she was wrong, I will say it. If you need me to say she was brave, I will say that too. Both can be true. I think she wanted to give you a gift you didn't know you wanted. And then the window where telling you would have been a gift closed, and she was ashamed. June is 10, I say hey, because numbers are sometimes kinder than names. 10 and 8. The math sits in the room with us and behaves like it is happy to, even though it isn't. Why were they at the grave alone? They weren't, Asha says. I was in the car. I promised I wouldn't hover. They didn't want to be looked at while they said goodbye. They've already had too many cameras pointed at them. I flinch. There were cameras? I ask stupidly, like I don't know who I am. Asha's mouth crooks. Not this time, she says. There are always cameras when a rich man and a tragedy share a sentence. Not today. I waited in the car because it's the only way they can be in public and still belong to themselves. I want to ask another 100 things. Who is taking care of them? Who knows? What happens now? But the next question pushes all the others aside. Do they know? Asha understands me better than most. She nods once. June always knew, she says. She was quiet about it. But she watched you on the news when there was an IPO or a scandal or a donation you made in the shape of a ribbon we could put on our front door, and sometimes she would ask questions like a child and sometimes like a lawyer. May found out later. Lila told her this summer, the way you tell a bedtime story when it's bright afternoon, quickly, as if to beat the clock. May's angry that you didn't come to her recital, even though you never knew it was happening. I was in Singapore on her recital day, I say, because that is the shape the world had taken. I was convincing a man sitting under an oil painting of his ancestors that he needed to invest in a stadium naming rights deal that would make him feel like a god for 3/4 of a news cycle. I would have flown home for a recital I didn't know I had. Asha does not comfort me. She does not scold me either. She looks at me like I'm one more person Sunbridge might help if they could stretch their hands a little farther. I didn't call you because I didn't know if you would be the disaster or the solution, she says. Then I realize that's not my call to make. It's June's and May's. I'll protect them from harm, but I won't keep them from the truth. I sit with that. I sit with Lila, brave and wrong and impossibly human. I sit with the girls at a grave in the rain. I sit with my name attached to events, on an exchange across the ocean, and a recital in a school gym that smelled like rubber and popcorn and small triumphs. "What do you need?" I ask finally. And I mean it in the most literal sense. I feel like I have finally learned the one question money can answer without lying. Asha gestures toward the window, toward the busy room where mothers and grandparents and children stand in a line that leads to food and a smile, and someone who will remember their names next Tuesday, too. "Today," she says, "I need milk and rice and a plumber who will show up when he says, but that's not what you're asking." "No," I say. "You need to meet them as their father," Asha says, and the word hits hard and beautiful. "They need to see you and decide what to do with you, and you need to decide if you can be loved for who you are now, not for the man you were to Lila before either of you knew what you were throwing away." We sit with that too, because the whole room is full of sitting and waiting and carefully bending without breaking. Then Asha stands and says, "They're in art class down the hall." She looks at me as if I might run. I don't. Down the hall, sunlight pushes through old glass and puts a halo on the little messes only happy rooms make. June is leaning over a page, drawing peonies, their rounded, generous petals curling like secrets you can't hold forever. May is painting something that looks like a cat, and a cloud chose to share a body. When June sees me, she stops and lifts her chin. May sees me and does not stop anything. She holds the brush like a warrior's weapon and makes another determined stroke. "I know you," a boy at the next table says to me, when the room catches up and the adults and the kids notice the way a famous person can bend a space just by standing in it. The boy's voice is simple wonder, not accusation. "You're on the commercial with the robot," he whispers robot, like it might turn its head if he says it too loud. I kneel so I'm not at an eclipse. "I am," I say. "The robot is nicer than I am." June waits until the world around us goes back to paint and paper. Then she says, "Asha told you." "She did," I say. I feel like I should say more, and then I decide the first thing we share should be true and small. I'm not very good at this. She studies me again with that weighing gaze. "We're good at each other," she says, not unkindly. She looks at May. "We can teach you some things." May finally stops painting. She puts down her brush and regards me like a person meeting a dog who might be friendly or might be a bear. "Do you have snacks?" she asks. It is not the question I was expecting, and exactly the one I should have been. "I have people who bring me snacks," I say, "and I can go get snacks, which is better." "People who bring snacks aren't the same as snacks," she says, "but they might be a start." I look at Asha, who is standing close enough to intervene if necessary, and far enough to say she trusts us to do the part you can't outsource. "Can I take them for hot chocolate?" I ask her. Not because I need permission, but because I want to learn what it looks like when you share children instead of grabbing them. She nods without ceremony. "You can," she says. "I'll come too, and we'll set rules like we know how." She turns to the girls. "Shoes on, jackets. No hot chocolate if you spill paint on Mr. Ethan's suit." "You're really Mr. Ethan?" May asks. "We thought you were a last name." "I have one of those too," I say, and tell it to them as if I were giving them a key they can decide whether to keep or throw in the fountain. We walk to the little cafe across the street that sells sandwiches with names that make you feel like you're in a city, even if you're not. The teenager behind the counter forgets to take our order when he sees me, then remembers that famous people are just people who have to say medium or large, like everybody else. I let June order first, and she does it like she's been in charge of small things for a long time. May orders something that sounds alarming and then translates it into "with extra marshmallows." We sit at a table by the window. Asha sits between the girls and me like a bridge, not a wall. There's a letter in my pocket I haven't told Asha about. It arrived yesterday in a thicker envelope than the sympathy cards, addressed in a hand I would recognize at 100 feet in a dusk storm. Inside was one sheet of paper and a sentence written with a firmness that had cost something. I wanted you to know, that was all. No apology, no explanation, just a thread thrown across a canyon. I pull it out and place it on the table like a truth lit from within. June looks at it, and something in her face eases, like a tension she didn't know she had is allowed to move at last. May peers at it with the seriousness of a child told she may have her own share of the world if she can read the fine print. "She wrote to you?" June asks. "She did," I say. "The letter is between us. I don't put my hand on it. I don't try to claim it. I don't know when she sent it. I don't know why she said only that. Maybe it was enough to push something over the edge that wouldn't go otherwise." June nods. She drinks her hot chocolate and wears a mustache of foam and pretends she doesn't. Asha lets her. May dips a finger in the foam and says, "You look like a walrus." And the kind tone of her teasing is more healing than anyone in the cafe understands. "I have a question," June says, as if she has a list too, and it's time to move to item 2. "Are you going to put us in the news?" My throat tightens again. "No," I say. "I'll be a wall. If anyone tries to put you there, I will stand so that their cameras see the back of my jacket and nothing else." "Okay," she says. She looks out the window at the yellow door across the street. "She said you would do that." "I didn't do that for your mother when I should have," is the sentence that drums in my chest like a robin at the window. I swallow it because there's a difference between truth and helpful truth, and today I want to be helpful in a way that builds. "We have another question," May says. "Are you going to be our dad or just a man we know?" Asha inhales like someone pulling in the smell of bread. It's too early, 1,000 miles too early, and exactly right to ask. Children do not live in waiting rooms the way adults do. They walk into whatever is on the other side because they presume the door will open if they push it enough. "I would like to be your dad," I say. The sentence is terrifying and easy. If you would like that too. "We'd like to try it," June says, cautious, precise. "We're not promising to like all your jokes, and if you have rules we don't like, we can talk about them." "We will have rules that none of us like," I say, a small smile. "I am not the boss of everyone, but I will not let you be hurt." "I don't want to move," May says, brave in a way that makes my heart want to applaud. "Our room has glow-in-the-dark stars." "You don't have to move," I say quickly, before the part of my brain that writes contracts can wake and start dictating. "We can make more rooms have stars. We can make me the one who moves more." "You have a big house on the TV," May says. "It would take a lot of stars." "Then we'll need a lot," I say. "There's a store literally built for that problem." Asha watches me like she's measuring whether I will break and whether my breaking will cut the right things. "We'll need to talk to a lawyer," she says, unromantic, necessary. "We'll need to formalize guardianship or custody, and there will be questions you can't answer with snacks." "I'll talk to a lawyer after I take them back to class," I say. "I won't bring the lawyer here unless you say. You can bring yours to mine. We can do this in a way that doesn't feel like what we left felt like." "What did you leave?" June asks. "A marriage that didn't know how to be gentle," I say. I look at my hands and wish they had held things better. A life where every problem got solved by someone who wasn't me. I'm learning to be the person who solves my own. May leans forward. "Do you know how to braid?" she asks suddenly, suspicion painting it like a trap. "No," I admit. "I know how to hire people who braid well." "That's cheating," she says, but she's smiling. "June can teach you." June considers me for a long beat. "We can practice on a doll first," she says, magnanimous. "Thank you," I say, and the intensity of my gratitude surprises me. We walk back in a rain that has decided it will keep being rain instead of drama. The city moves around us in its indifferent kindness. Asha sets appointments on her phone. I send a text I never thought I'd send to a lawyer whose name has been on magazine lists and whose kindness has not. The girls take my hands without ceremony to jump over a puddle and then forget to let go. We step back into Sunbridge, where the light is bad and the hope is good. June shrugs off her coat. May runs toward her painting like it might have changed while she was gone. The next weeks are both impossible and ordinary. The newspapers get wind before we want them to, and we learn that the way to keep a story from eating your children is to feed it other stories instead. We introduce rules and then rewrite them. I learn how to pack a lunch that won't be traded away for something with more sugar. I read a book about braiding that acts like it's about knots and turns out to be about patience. June teaches me that I'm fine means ask me twice. May learns that when I say I will be in row 3 at 6:30, I will, and that I will leave a meeting with a man whose last name is an airport if I need to. I tell my board I won't be what I was, and they tell me the cost, and I tell them I already know it, and I pay it. We make a trust in Lila's name that buys milk and rice and the time of the plumber who shows up on time. We buy a bucket of glow-in-the-dark stars the size of a small moon, and one night, after the girls fall asleep, Asha and I stick them to the ceiling of my old house, and then I sell that house and buy another one within walking distance of Sunbridge, because getting where you belong should not have to require a car and a calendar. There are hard days. There are days when June doesn't want to look at me because I am wearing the suit I wore in the newspaper photo where my smile tried to hide how empty my house was. There are days when May yells, she hates me because I won't let her watch something full of glamour and quiet cruelty on TV. There are nights when I ask Lila out loud what she expected me to do now that she isn't here to translate their middle-of-the-night storms. There is a day when we go to the courthouse and the judge looks at me like a man with money and a plan, and I look back like a man with a heart and a promise, and we find the middle. There is also joy, the ordinary, ridiculous kind. June reads me a poem she won't read to her class and only lets me clap once. May loses a tooth, and we carry out the complicated economy of the tooth fairy. Asha finds a gray hair and pretends it was mine, and I pretend I mind, and then we do not pretend. On the anniversary of Lila's death, we go to the cemetery with peonies that are somehow exactly in season and lay them on the grass, and I tell the stone, then the air, then my own chest, that I forgive her, and that I am grateful, and that I am furious, and that I am happy, and the sky listens in the way the sky always does. There is a letter, too, not from Lila. There will be no more of those, but from the clinic where we left our consent in stacks of paper. It arrives with a certified stamp and a fine apology, and an implication that a donation might help them write better policies. It says that what happened should not have, that a courier with a file folder full of good intentions made my signature a door instead of a window. I carry the letter to the kitchen and fold it into something that, if you held it just so, might look like a bird. June watches me from the table and says, "You make birds out of everything," and I say, "Some things need to fly away." And we both understand I'm not talking about paper. On a Tuesday that begins with a broken coffee maker and ends with a recital where May is a frog with a crown drawn on her forehead and the confidence of a conductor, we stop by the cemetery again. It is a thing we do now, not every week, not with ritual, but the way you stop by a friend's house, because you were in the neighborhood of your memories. The stone looks less like a wound and more like a place to rest your bags. The girls arrange peonies in a circle. I tuck June's latest note under the smooth pebble with a care that is almost reverence. May brushes dirt from the letters of the name as if the granite might catch cold. Asha waits at the car and pretends not to watch us. The rain holds off. The sky is the color of the inside of a shell. June takes my hand. Her braid is perfect. I did it. It took 30 minutes and 2 detours into despair and 1 YouTube video I will never admit to watching, but I did it. She squeezes my fingers and says, without looking at me, "You're good at this." And I say, without looking at her, "I had a good teacher." 2 good teachers, May says, pressing herself against my leg, owning the space as if she were born to it. Me too. You too, I say, especially you. We aren't perfect. We are not what we were. We aren't even something a movie would understand how to score, but we are, each of us, something we weren't before. Ethan, who saw two girls crying, has turned into Ethan, who learns how to stay. The girls who had a secret have turned into girls who have a father, who is learning to be the kind of man they can tell the whole truth to. The woman who fought the world with a yellow door has turned into the person who keeps opening it for the three of us, whether we deserve it or not. When we leave the cemetery, June asks if we can go by Sunbridge to help Asha inventory the pantry, because she likes the smell of the labels and the sense that doing something small still counts. May asks if we can stop for snacks, and the way she says it makes me want to buy the entire aisle and then teach her how to pick only what she needs. I say yes to both. The girls run ahead down the path with the easy stride of children who know their people are close behind. I lag for a moment, a step or two, and look back at the stone that says "beloved" twice, and think without pain for the first time that some words are big enough to hold an entire life. At home, the stars on the ceiling glow just enough to make the dark feel like it has company. June stands on her bed and taps one, making a secret wish she won't share. May declares she is a constellation and lies outspread on the rug. I sit on the edge of the doorway with the letter in my pocket, the one that didn't say everything and said enough, and a heart I did not know I had years ago. I watch my daughters sleep. Later, when the house is quiet, I open my laptop and draft a message to my board that is not about quarterly projections. It's about the new business we're in, the complicated arithmetic of belonging. The returns are slower, the risk is incalculable, but the dividends look like glow-in-the-dark stars, and the sound of two girls laughing in the hall and a peony on a grave on a day when the sky is merciful. In the morning, I make pancakes badly and then better. We fight over who gets the first one the way people fight when they know there will be more. I burn one, and May says it looks like a dragon, and June says it's a metaphor, and I think that maybe the thing wealth kept from me was knowing how good failure smells when it's for the right people. We eat at the counter and make a list for the day that includes call the plumber again and practice braiding and be on time for everything, and the list isn't that different from the ones I made as a younger man. Only this time, when I write the last item, my hand is steady and my chest is quiet. Love, I write, and then because we are beginning, I add learn. We learn each other over a year that bends like a river that knows exactly where it's going. Some days are long, some short. The glow-in-the-dark stars fade a little, and then, as if they want to remind us they have their own schedule, they brighten again. The letter stays in my pocket until one night, when the girls are at a sleepover at Sunbridge with an indoor camping theme. I take it to the grave and tuck it under the pebble with the others. It is raining again, that soft rain that makes the world honest. I touch the stone. I say thank you. I say, how dare you? I say I am doing my best, and your daughters are teaching me, and I am teaching them, and Asha is teaching all three of us to be brave and wrong and then brave again. As I turn to go, a small car pulls in, and a woman climbs out with an umbrella that has daisies along the edge. She recognizes me, and I brace for a camera or a story someone will sell, but she only nods and says, "My husband is over there," and points with her chin, as if the dead needed you to show them with your whole body. And I watch his favorite shows after he's gone because it makes the house feel like it did when he was alive. She stops. "I saw you on one of them and you looked sad." "I was," I say. "I am less so now." She nods like this is the right answer. "Good," she says. "The world doesn't need any more men who think sadness is a map." On the drive home, the city looks like a place that knows my name. When I pull into our street, the windows of our house glow with lamplight like another set of stars that forgot to stay in the sky. June and May tumble in an hour later smelling like popcorn and mosquito repellent and friendship. Asha texts me a photo of the pantry shelves lined labeled beautiful in their soldierly kindness, and a note that says, "Your family is a lot." I write back, "So is the world. Thanks for not letting us be less." She sends a heart. I send a peony. There are moments still when I think of what might have been had Lila told me earlier, had I insisted on listening sooner, had the clinic kept a better gate, or had my hand paused over a signature. In those moments, I watch the girls race down the hall and hear their feet on the wood and the air filling with laughter like a glittering spill. You only regret if you've forgotten that mess and joy share a border. I think then that maybe love is what fills the space between what should have been and what is. And I think that the story I am telling myself now is not one about a man who lost a wife, but about a man who found his daughters crying at a grave and discovered that grief can be a doorway if you walk through it with your hands open. On a Saturday filled with all the unwritten errands that make up a life, we go to the farmer's market, and the girls pick peonies you're not supposed to pick because they're attached to other people's vases, and June lectures May about respect, and May lectures me about spontaneity, and I buy us all lemonade, and we sit on the curb with our legs touching and look like any family that had to learn itself out loud. We walk home past the yellow door, and Asha steps out to wave and then pulls me aside to ask about the plumbing and whether I think we can fund another program for fathers who are learning to show up. We can. We will. We are. That night, when the glow-in-the-dark sky is 1 degree dimmer and the city has quieted its teeth, I stand in the hallway and watch my daughters sleep. I am not in a commercial with a robot. I am not in a boardroom with a clock that never allows for anything that matters. I am in a house where everything matters, and nothing does if we are together. I think of the first day, the rain, the girls' small backs bent like question marks over the stone. I think of the note tucked beneath the pebble. I think of Lila's one-line letter, and how the smallest sentence can save a life if it's the right one. I wanted you to know. I do. I know now. And knowing has made a map of me I recognize when I look in the mirror. We do not go back to the people we were. We go forward. We become the story we choose to tell with our hands, the one where 2 girls cried at a grave and a man saw them and his heart broke in a way that let the light in. We choose that every day. We choose it when we pack lunches and sit in hard chairs in school auditoriums and wait in emergency rooms for stitches and learn to braid and apologize and try again. We choose it when we hold a peony and put it down. We choose it when we say to the stone and to the sky and to each other, "We are here. We are learning. We are at last good at this,